Rayman 3 is a weird game. Not in the sense that it came out at a weird time, nor did it do anything outwardly wrong. Rayman 3, more so than the other games in this franchise, is a weird game because it's just that. Weird. It was like that one really quirky kid at school that was genuinely good at art and still achieved high in all their lessons, but out of nowhere would start drawing inappropriate body parts on the whiteboard because it was funny. I wonder how many people watching this even know what Rayman really is, or how many of you know who he is beyond those 2 reboot games from the 2010s. If you do, congratulations, you are cordially invited into the Cool Kids Club. If not, then allow me to enlighten you on this odd, wacky franchise and why the third game is my personal favorite from my youthful days, before the dark times of their developer Ubisoft garnishing the reputation of said body parts on the whiteboard. Rayman as a franchise is almost as strange as the character concept itself. Apart from the 2 most recent games of 2023, Origins and Legends, no 2 Rayman games have quite been the same. The original Rayman from 1995 was a whimsical 2D side-scroller in a wonderfully imaginative, if slightly fever-dreamy, landscape that's ultimately brought down by a rapid, untested difficulty spike that plunges the player into the ninth circle of hell. Next was Rayman 2 in 1999, which was anything but this. Except for when you actually do play through the ninth circle of hell. Transitioning over to 3D, Rayman 2 The Great Escape, or Revolution for the posh kids on their fancy 6th gen consoles, suddenly turned to a darker, bleaker, more desperate tone, with our limbless French anomaly going on a quest to awaken an ancient god by retrieving 4 lost masks from hidden temples to save the world from robot pirates. It was a game that focused heavily on its world building and a variety of side characters who all aided Rayman in one way or another, and 4 years later, in 2003, we end up with the vastly graphically upgraded 3rd game in the franchise, Hoodlum Havoc. This game ditched the vast majority of the previous side characters besides our tutorial Green Bottle and Dumbo Frog Friend, and none of the previously explored locations are seen again. On top of that, half the entire game revolves around escorting said frog friend to the hospital because he accidentally ingested the new antagonist, a dark ball of fluff known as Andre, who has transformed the magical lums of this land into his army of hoodlums. This is basically the main objective and plot of the game. With that in mind, it may come as no surprise that tonally, this is by far the quirkiest, weirdest, and zaniest Rayman game of them all, even for most platformers short of being full-blown satire. So, is that the reason why I like this game so much? Well, not exactly. Earlier I said how the former world was basically ditched, but that doesn't mean there isn't one at all. We're taken into a series of new worlds, each making up of 1 to 9 stages, which range from old temples, forests, swamps, dark caves, factories, and a snow level, sans any ice physics anywhere to be found thankfully. The game has a very linear structure, so each world progressively follows one after the other, not too unlike Rayman 1, and each one brings its own unique appearance and flavor, with each segment of a stage being uniquely identifiable from the last, which really amplifies that feeling of progressing through a grand adventure after each blockade of enemies while on your way to excise the main bad guy from somebody's bowels. Seriously, every location I set foot in is painted with its own atmosphere and soul that the developers at Ubisoft genuinely put a lot of care and heart into crafting, which is very much on show with the magical presence that looms over the land of the living dead, or the rising tension as you ascend the Tower of the Leptis, approaching the ever-looming final boss. All around you are these fantastical, unusual shapes on trees, shrubbery, and rocks, whether in the foreground or background, all making you feel utterly transported to another world, and it feels so beautiful. And even when there are the more plodding sections like the longest shortcut where you need to beat a timer to get through some doors, and the parts where you're shrunk down and driving your own shoe to beat up your other shoe, yeah, I told you this game was weird. These sections are short and don't overstay their welcome. And yet it's not just the appearance of the world that brings out its magic. While the majority of the level design can stand proudly on looks alone, it's the music that truly gives it color. I personally see this as one of my favorite video game soundtracks of all time, even rivaling some of my favorite soundtracks in Super Mario Galaxy and even Undertale. Tracks like In the Fairy Council or The Land of the Living Dead that create such a rich, beautiful, and calm atmosphere for a world that's meant to be peaceful and undisturbed. On the opposite side, you get tracks that build extremely high tension for really dramatic moments, such as running through your life in the claustrophobic caves in the desert of the Carnarvon. before escaping rapidly rising lava at the climax of Hoodlum headquarters, which enriched the high anxiety from these parts of the game. One of the things I would argue has aged very well in this now 20-year-old game would actually have to be the gameplay itself. Rayman's weight and momentum when platforming at a variety of 3D angles feels agile and highly controlled for the player. His signature helicopter hair for gliding nails that extra level of control, and the combat-heavy sections still feel fluid and fast even compared to modern titles. You're encouraged to use these curved projectile shots to optimize offense against several different types of hoodlums, which is vastly superior to simply throwing the same repeated attack over and over again like in Rayman 2. Most of the enemies can switch positions and block standard attacks with their Vuvuzela looking rifles, so mastering this feels extra rewarding and very satisfying in virtually any combat scenario on offer. There are also 5 temporary power-ups you can acquire, including flight, a damage buff, or a fully controllable rocket, which can either change or enhance your abilities, which appear plentifully and offer enough variety to really spruce up the gameplay style. Okay, fine, so let's talk about what makes this game simultaneously weird on top of all of the praise I've given it so far. Rayman 3 was the first game in this franchise that really went ham on the humor side of things, with plenty of slapstick gags, some surprisingly adult references for a 3+ rated game.
I've been a bad boy. A very, very bad boy.
And non-stop passive dialogue trying so hard to be funny. And while it does hit sometimes, the cutscenes involving the doctors being absolutely hysterical, there are other times where it seems like a little much. Granted, it is a game marketed for children, and does not feel too out of place for the tone of this game. The enemies in general are quite wacky in design and mannerisms alone. Except for the Cadarans, those things are infamously terrifying by design. While I have jested on how half of the game is escorting your companion to remove the bad guy from his stomach after swallowing him whole, this peculiarity does not feel too distracting in the grand scheme. And the second half of the game is chasing down a new adversary you'd met along your journey, who is so consumed by revenge that he practically sacrifices his soul just to get your head on a platter. The humor is then mostly ditched in the final stage for a more serious, slow rise in tension that builds up to an extended final boss fight that truly delivers itself as the grand climax to the game. But maybe the reason why Rayman failed as a franchise was the sheer total inconsistency between games. To say that no two games were alike in the original lineup would be an understatement. If it wasn't for the reoccurring characters that came back for the previous games, this could easily have been seen as a standalone title not related to Rayman in any way. Even Rayman 4 was supposed to be more of the same but bigger, but eventually morphed into Raving Rabbids. And when that game took off, people seemed to lock onto the rabbits because they had a much clearer identity as the screaming silly little bunnies. And for what they were, people liked them. Otherwise, how else were they be getting Nintendo crossovers today? They found that one thing that Rayman himself could never seem to find: a clear identity. Perhaps Rayman 3's sudden shift of tone doomed him into the slumber he is stuck in today. Until hopefully the Mario & Rabbids Sparks of Hope DLC, which is promised to feature our lovable oddity again after a decade of silence, sparks some hope for a new game for this character. At this point, who knows? But whatever Rayman 3 was, it is still a very beloved game for many people today, including myself. And even if Rayman does fizzle out of mind altogether, he still, at least, had some incredibly fun games to remember him by.